Hello everybody, what is up and welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Liz, your host here at Crimes Untold, and obviously you're watching this over on my YouTube channel, Liz Austin X Crimes Untold. So today we're going to be covering another set of unidentifieds that have been identified as of 2023. So kicking off our video, we're going to start with Webster Fisher. Webster Fisher was missing for more than 40 years, but Webster Fisher was actually identified by the Will County Sheriff's Office, and this was on March 22nd of 2023. So on July 30th, 1980, the remains of a man was found in a wooden crate in a power plant in Lockport, Illinois. The man remained unidentified for 40 years. This man was shot to death, shot in the stomach by a shotgun, and stuck in a 4x4x2 crate. He was wearing wool socks, one slipper, blue work pants, and a green shirt. He also had an abundance of keys in his pocket as well. There was an updated facial reconstruction that was released in 2022 using his skeletal structure. After this reconstruction, they decided to ask Othram for help to help identify him via forensic genetics. He finally regained his identity this year. His family never knew what happened to him. He simply just left home to buy cigarettes one night and left behind his wife and his 3 kids. It's believed that the crate he was in was thrown off of the 9th Street Bridge, just like kind of what John Wayne Gacy did. And this happened in mid-July 1980. His body then floated down the river into basically like he's in the crate floated down the river, and then it ended up hitting other debris in the river, and eventually he would get stuck. He would be removed from the crate. It's all kind of really weird. So the crate was stuck in a grate, and it was sticking out of a pile of wood, basically, all this debris. His body was in water for several weeks, hence why it hindered his identification. Next, we're going to be talking about Patricia Greenwood. So Sandusky police unveiled that the woman found on a beach off of Cedar Point Road in 1980, 43 years ago, has finally been identified. She was found wearing a disco-style dress, which was beige, like party cocktailish dress, size 12, nylon pantyhose, a lace slip, and a white A-cup bra. Even after the discovery of this Jane Doe, her cause of death has never been disclosed. Her body was exhumed in 2020 under the belief that she was Judy Martin's, who was missing, but through DNA it was found that she wasn't. And also through genetic genealogy, they were able to determine that this Jane Doe was in fact Patricia Eleanor Greenwood. It is believed that she died via homicide in either 1979 or 1980. She had an abundance of broken bones, and they are unsure on whether she died in Michigan or in Ohio. It is unfortunate that only a few facts are actually known about her death and the information surrounding her death, but it is public fact that her death is being looked at as a possible homicide. But we should be thankful to the Porchlight Project will fund testing that helped in funding the genetic testing for identifying this Jane Doe. Next, we're going to be talking about the Lander County Jane Doe of 1990. Judy Manzaneras was identified on April 10th, 2023 to be the Lander County Jane Doe, discovered in February of 1990. So this discovery was made by some hikers in the area that found scattered partial skeletonized remains. This was in an area of on a hilltop road, which is on the Shoshone Mountain or Shoshone Mountain in Nevada. Upon further examination, the remains showed markings of sawing or that of her remains being dismembered. It also would be discovered and allude to the fact that her cause of death was blunt force trauma due to multiple tragic blows on her skull. When the medical examiner also looked at her legs, specifically her right femur, they noticed a prior injury that could have potentially affected the way that she walked. The torso has never been recovered. This is the only part of her body that has never been found. She was estimated to be around 25 to 40 in age as well. So at the scene, there was very little for investigators to go off of. The only thing they could find was a turquoise and coral, it was a sterling silver ring that had a turquoise and coral triangular stones on it, and it was either a 7.5 or a size 8. Other than that, there wasn't really much else. They were stumped. The Lander County Jane Doe would be added into NamUs as UP7532 in 2010, and they would put this Jane Doe's DNA and her dental records on there as well. They had hope by adding her DNA or her dental records that they would get a hit in NamUs, but no hits happened. So the LSU Faces Laboratory would complete an updated forensic sketch of the Lander County Jane Doe in June of 2019, and they had huge hopes that this would help aid in her identification, but again, the leads they had were exhausted. So in June 2022, Othram would be asked to help in the identification aid of the Lander County Jane Doe. They would develop a DNA profile using her DNA they had extracted, and basically what they do is with the information they create from this profile, they build a tree, and they were able to upload her DNA and onto various different sites, and they would find potential matches. With the help of the amazing advancement in genetic genealogy, or forensic genetics as a lot of people like to call it, the Lander County Jane Doe was identified as 19-year-old Judy Manzaneras from Salt Lake City, Utah. She had been reported missing by her family, but her case had never been connected to this one. If you or anyone you know has any information about the death of Judy Manzaneras, please contact Nevada State Police Investigation Division at 775-684-7412. Again, if you or anyone you know has any information about the death of Judy Manzaneras, please contact the Nevada State Police Investigation Division at 775-684-7412. So this one's really quick, so we have 2 more left for today, but the next one is super quick. We're going to be talking about Eric Cupo. So he was a homicide victim in 1998 in Santa Cruz, and he was identified on April 12th of 2023. So this John Doe was identified using the help of Othram, and he would be identified as 22-year-old Eric Cupo, or Eric. He was known at the time of his murder by his nickname, which was Huck, and he was living in a transient type of lifestyle. His remains were found in a remote area in Boulder Creek, California, on December 27th of 1998. He had 2 stab wounds to the throat, and he suffered from severe head injuries. Other characteristics that were released about him was that he was blue-eyed, he had brown hair, and a long ponytail at the top, but his sides were short, so kind of like a Viking-ish style haircut, or like nowadays the modern man bun, where it's long on the top and short on the sides. So the person that killed him was actually a man named Jeremy Michael Towner, who was arrested and sentenced to life in prison, but he didn't act alone. A man named James Dotson and Kimberly Labor also played a role in his beating and stabbing death. Apparently the reason behind his murder is because they thought he had a gun that they wanted, and he actually didn't. It's such a senseless murder for something that he allegedly had. His identity has been solved, and his case also has been solved. So last on our list for this episode is the Clackamas Jane Doe. So Illya Wilkins in 1976, she went missing in Clackamas County and was never heard from again, or heard from or seen again. Well, that's what we all believed up until recently, or people in the area believed until recently. Let's kind of discuss the Clackamas County Jane Doe, and we'll see the correlation. So the partial remains of a skull was found outside of Sandy, Oregon, back in August of 1981. The skull was found on some property that was privately owned, and the owners at the time were out counting trees, and they stumbled upon this skull. Upon looking at the skull, it was determined that she was in an advanced state and age. Possibly she was an elderly person. Almost immediately, investigators noted that there was actually an elderly woman that had gone missing from an old home, specifically the Bonnex home for the aged, back in August of 1976. Illya Wilkins was that woman. It is said that around the time she vanished, she was experiencing various memory issues and memory problems, and unfortunately for her family, she just wasn't found. Even with the sneaking suspicion that this skull they discovered in August of 1981 was indeed Illya, we wouldn't know for some time. So with the help of an anthropologist, Dr. Nikki Vance, she would add the Clackamas County Jane Doe into NamUs, and she would also submit a sample of the skull as well. And she would reanalyze the remains well, what was left of them. So upon submitting the sample, it yielded a DNA profile that was able to be uploaded into CODIS. And CODIS is a specific interface in which basically it's like a giant DNA bank, and you can cross-reference your sample to those ones. But unfortunately, there was no genetic matches. This was back in 2010. So in 2011, her case was uploaded to NamUs as UP9499. On April 4th of 2023, the Clackamas County Jane Doe was officially and publicly identified as that of Miss Illya Wilkins. Through the genetic testing of her remaining family members, they were able to produce a match to the Clackamas County Jane Doe that was on file. And that sneaking suspicion that we all knew this was Illya Wilkins finally came true. So that, my friends, is our next set of unidentifieds that have been identified in 2023. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in my next one.